You have instructional design questions. We discuss answers.
Okay, Chuck, tonight we're going to talk about careers in ISD. This topic really excites me because there's a lot of opportunity, it seems, out there with ISD. Whether someone's new or someone who's been in the industry for a while, there seems to be a lot of titles when it comes to instructional systems designers. And I want to really pick your brain about this because as somebody who's new to the field, it excites me that there's a lot of opportunity, but it completely overwhelms me because you, in your upcoming book, Instructional Systems Design Theory and Practice, you have a very comprehensive list of titles in ISD. And that list goes on for a whole page in small font, and I don't know how many there are. I lost count. I couldn't even count them. There are so many.
A lot.
Okay.
There are a bunch.
Which is great. But how about if we just kind of talk about some of the top ones to sort of get us started on this conversation? Because I think that this is a really important topic for those people who maybe are not in the ISD industry yet or just starting out, and they want to understand a little bit more about the opportunities that are present within this industry.
Well, I think that's fair. And one thing you have to think about when you talk about instructional designers is that almost anybody who teaches, almost anybody who's a subject matter expert, almost anybody in any capacity that passes on learning from one person to another is in some way an instructional designer. So when you talk about all these different titles, what I have found over the years is a lot of people don't realize that they're actually instructional designers. They don't have the title, they may have never heard of it, but nonetheless, they really are practicing instructional design. So this very large list of occupational titles that I put in the book just represents a small sampling of what could be considered instructional design. And I think that's the important point of it is many people are doing this work. They don't realize it. And once they figure out that there's a real career path here where you can get graduate degrees and PhDs and certifications and other things in the field and do this work with a focus on the design aspect of it, then all of this starts to resonate together. And so call me an instructional designer, call me an instructional technologist, call me lots of things, but it's really about what the work is and how many millions of people are actually doing this.
Now, you brought up a good point about graduate work. In your opinion, is a graduate degree necessary? I mean, I'm sure it's appealing and it definitely gives a person an advantage. Is it necessary in this field to enter it?
To enter it, no. But like most fields, if you don't have a higher level of knowledge and practice in it, you're not going to be able to perform at the level that a lot of employers will expect you to be able to do that. So when you look at job title announcements, so, we need 7 people to work on this project, they will specifically say, we need an instructional designer, they need to have so many years of work, or they need to have a degree, or they need to have certification. And the reason that that's true is because there's so many things you can learn about instructional design in these courses and these programs that frankly you wouldn't even know exist unless you participated. So simple things like writing objectives. Most people can't write a 4-part objective. They are unable to do that until they come into a program and learn how to do that. They've never heard of Gagne's 9 events. They've never heard of learning transfer and all the things that we study in these programs. So when you're looking at it from a perspective of an employer, what you really want to do is you want somebody who can come in and get going. And certainly you're going to work with them about specifics of the organization and projects and the rest of it. But you want a designer that can come in and know about ADDIE or some of the other models. You want somebody who can write objectives. You want somebody who can do a population analysis. You want somebody who can do lots of things that you can't do unless you are taught how to do them and practice them. And that's what these programs do for you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's very fair to say. Before I enrolled in the graduate program at UMBC, I had no idea about any of these topics, any of these, the names, ADDIE, I had no idea what that even meant.
Well, let me ask you, Denise, because I think this is a good point of discussion. What were the things that you learned that first term that surprised you, that made you appreciate how professional and how much of a science the art of instructional design really is?
I will tell you the thing that impressed me the most and the thing that really excites me about this field and makes me feel confident that I can be successful in it is that it's a systems approach.
Yes.
And I really like having processes to follow. I really do. I thrive in structure. And when something is way like open-ended, do what you want to do, whatever you want to do is fine. Let's just see where you go. I don't operate well within that paradigm. I like to know there's a system in place because when there is, it's a formula. It's a formula for success. And as long as you're following that formula, in my opinion and in my experience so far, then you're going to be successful as long as you're following the rules that are set out there. And so I was really impressed with the whole analysis phase and the in-depth nature of it. I also really enjoyed the evaluation, learning about evaluation, because I feel like in my experience with workshops, with educational ventures that I've pursued, I haven't had that level of evaluation asked of me as a participant. And when I learned how to create a design plan using the ADDIE method, that evaluation was critical. And I really thought through it because how powerful is it to learn, to be able to evaluate with application feedback as you're learning, as you're in that course. And it helps lead a person from point A to point B in a very just organized fashion. So that's my experience with ISD, with the ADDIE model, and as a newbie to the ISD field.
So you've got to think about learning and how do people learn? So how do things go from someone seeing it, hearing it, practicing it to long-term memory, which is where it is stored and which we now think of as learning in most cases. So instructional design teaches you this process. And where this heads is if you're going to design courses, you have to design them in a way that allows people to learn. I mean, how do you do this? Lecturing? Okay, that could be part of it, but if all you do is listen to lectures, you're not going to learn a lot. You need to practice things, you need to talk about things, you need to have at least 3 opportunities to practice whatever the skill or the knowledge is before you have any chance of moving it to short-term memory and then storing it in long-term memory. And all this is kind of the backstory on ISD. So when you talk about evaluation, what are you looking at? I mean, okay, they participated. Well, isn't that wonderful? But can they do what we need them to do? So then you get into evaluation of mastery, which is a real skill to be able to write evaluation tasks and to be able to look at these things from an instructional design perspective and say, okay, I can tell you that this learner and this group of learners are able to do these things. And you see this in countless places across instructional design and all the organizations and all the topics that we work with. And to the uninitiated, this stuff doesn't exist because you don't know it exists and you've never worked with it. So it's kind of like if you're driving a car, do you really want to get in and try to take the engine apart and find out why it's rattling? You're probably not going to do that unless you're a trained technician. Same in instructional design. Don't design courses and don't evaluate learning if you don't really appreciate the depth of what you're setting on and what you have to do to make that work.
That's a great analogy. I love analogies, and that sticks in my brain. That's really a wonderful way to look at it, and I think that helps set that clear in my mind and hopefully in other people's minds listening to this. Now, what are some of the typical roles that an instructional designer will play out there in the field?
Yeah, what's a typical designer doing? In my career, it's been everything from sitting there writing objectives and putting together courses to traveling around the world, putting together programs. So 5 years, I managed a program in Egypt that eventually went to over 2 million people. And you think about instructional design, you think about sitting somewhere in an office and doing things like that, but it's much more than that. You're out in the field, you're working with people, you're doing analysis work, you're talking to professionals, you're working with subject matter experts. And depending on what your career goals are and what you want to accomplish, you can do this anywhere. So whether you do projects in Egypt like I did or whether you do them here, the the mark that you leave on students and learners by doing this correctly and doing it well and putting together these large scale programs, it really makes a difference. So an instructional designer is anything you want to be. If you want to write courses and do that by yourself, be a boutique shop for instructional design, you could certainly do that. You can work in an organization that has hundreds of instructional designers. Look at the military and government and other large scale entities like that. You can travel the world and be an instructional designer. My graduate students are in every corner of the earth doing this work.
Wow, that just really opens up the field really wide. And that should get people really excited about this. I know it does me, because there's freedom in that. All right, so let's talk about somebody who wants to break into the ISD world, who does not have concrete experience yet. Someone like myself, for instance, I'm in graduate school. Once I get out of graduate school, my professional experience hasn't been in ISD directly, although I can see a lot of crossover and areas that I do apply some ISD principles to what I do. But what does somebody do who has gone through, say, graduate school, has all this experience as a graduate student, but does not have that professional work experience? Yet they've built a portfolio and all of that through graduate work. Is that enough to get them a foot in the door? Is there something else that people like that should be doing to get that experience?
The idea is that this is not a field that you start out in and grow in with no other experience in your life or a vacuum of things. Most of the people that go into instructional design do it after something else or as part of something else. Very few people started this, certainly in their teens or in that age group. They've gone out, they've got experience in something. They've been teachers, they've been trainers, they're subject matter experts. And then they find that they can do better things and learn more and be more professional in this course design deal if they learn instructional design. So anybody's watching, anybody's thinking about this, don't worry about an experience base to draw from. There's no expectation that you'll have that. That's what these programs do, these certificates, or you're in graduate school or undergrad program or anything that you're in. I don't think any of them are designed with the notion that you have no world experience, that you have no life experience to bring to this process. What we want to do is fine tune what you bring and add to it in great volume the things that are very vertical in instructional design.
That is really great to hear. And that makes me feel so much better,
So
actually.
you can do this. I know that.
There is hope for me after all.
There is lots of hope. And for everybody, and I think that's the point. Because when I first started in this field, I'd been a professional. I was an academic administrator. I was, doing this and that. And it was suggested to me by someone that I worked with that the university needed someone who knew what instructional design was. And I said, that's great. What's instructional design? And I had no concept. And came into the program, and now look, so if I could do it, rest assured you could do it. I mean, it's all about being at the right place and learning the right things and then taking it and running with it. So you will find many people in this field. In fact, I would say the vast majority of people in this field that came from somewhere else doing great things somewhere else and just came here to learn instructional design and then went out and did great things in instructional design.
Well, I'll tell you what, for those who are listening to this video who are interested in a career in ISD, I hope this video makes you feel better like it did me. Talking with Chuck really helped because I do feel a lot better in terms of my opportunities. The field out there is so wide open from this conversation. That's what I grasped. And it's something that if you really put your mind to it, you can make it happen.
You definitely can do that.
Yeah.
And I think in the future, what we ought to do, Denise, is start doing some of these on particular aspects of instructional design. So an average day for an instructional design expert working on a class-based course, a typical day for an instructional designer working on a web-based course, how to design with learning management systems, all these very specific things, because an overview is great, but I think people will get more direct information and applicable information, if they can see themselves sitting at that desk doing that job, and this is what you will do for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, these specific things.
I think that would be super helpful. So I'm going to take you up on that. I'm going to schedule those talks with you because I'm really interested in learning more about specific roles within ISD. So
Let's
we will
do
be
it.
doing that. So for everybody listening, if you are interested in that too, make sure you subscribe so that you will not miss those videos. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great night.